All right, buddy, welcome. Thanks for tuning in. Kind of going to continue with this theme of tuning. I think I put out a video last week or a few days ago about it and kind of the known load method. And, the known load method is extremely useful to get you, on target and with a good tune really fast. But sometimes you may be in a position where you have no you don't know anything about the bullet or maybe the bullet powder combo, whatever it may be. So in that case, so anyway, my first recommendation is especially if you're not already at kind of a high level of sort of mastery with tuning to begin with, is to probably not use a combination that you don't know anyone who's using it. You may have went online or something and asked people, "Hey, are you using this?" And they're like, "Nah, never used that combination ever. Don't know much about it." Blah blah blah. Yeah, probably just wait until someone else starts using it to then kind of figure out where you may want to start, because if you're going to sort of start your own exploratory analysis in the unknown territory, it could take a while. And it definitely is it could be tedious, and also you need to be very methodical. So and all those things. Maybe if you have a lot of time on your hands, go ahead, be the first one to blaze the trail. But I don't recommend it. Most bullet makers actually send their bullets to people for testing. So, for example, if you're hanging out with Lou Murdica, you see tons of, Burger bullets all over the warehouse. It's like, well, because Burger sends them the bullets and says, shoot them and, give us some data on them, right? So, there should be data on them. Okay, but sometimes I guess there isn't, and I'll go through what I do when I actually did an exploratory tuning analysis. I got my 284 Winchester, and I saw that this was, I don't know if they just came out or they recently came out with the Sierra 197 hollow point boat tail in 7 millimeter. And it was described as like a sleek 27 caliber elongated ogive. So looking at the bullet, you can see, yeah, it is it is pretty sleek there. It is pretty elongated, and the different. And then you look at the meat plat is tiny. It's actually comes really well pointed. You could shave it a little bit to make it more uniform, but no big deal. It actually comes pointed pretty well. Anyway, so then, I looked at the bullet, and it's like, okay, kind of knowing what I know about sort of what are called tangent and secant ogives, like, typically where do I seat a bullet that has this kind of ogive? So on like most of my tangent bullets, they have pretty wide seating depth windows. I mean, I can seat them from, 20 thousandths in all the way back, 25 thousandths off the lands. Okay. So like I could, with most of my tangent bullets, there's usually some kind of good tune window with those a wide range of seating depths. And I think that's pretty well known right now. A lot of people say, oh, tangent, yeah, they're easy to, easy to tune because there's typically a pretty wide window there. So, but it's not uncommon though for a tangent bullet, let's say, 20 thousandths in, and touch, are two sweet spots, for that particular bullet. All right. Maybe taking it off then doesn't work so well. So sometimes you have that situation. Sometimes I have a situation with a tangent bullet where going in does not working well, but 10 off is like, like 9 to 12 thousandths off, with 10 being like the sweet spot. So it's not every time that a tangent bullet is going to get you a real beautiful wide tune window. It may be that you need to test a wide range, and then you'll notice for that particular bullet, yeah, this one seems to like, way in or on touch, or this one seems to like, being 10 off. Certainly that's the case with some of the PRP bullets that I use. I mean, the Jokers, I can tell you right now, typically always 20 in or touch. And then the Diablos are like definitely 10 off, you know. So anyway, so I've sort of mapped that with these particular bullets, but I had nothing to go on with this 197. I even posted it on some forums asking people, have you shot it before? No one really has. And then the powder I was using was RL26. And at that point in time, for whatever reason, I don't know why. And in fact, someone even told me that, well, there's been some shooters using RL26 winning some F class matches and some long range matches, but they're not telling everyone they're using RL26. I guess there's some people that are like secretive about what they use. I don't know, whatever. But I certainly I use the RL, the Alliant brand, and they seem to shoot really well. They seem to be able to take really stout loads with minimal pressure sign. So I really wanted to try RL26 with this bullet. And like no one either knew, or if they knew, they were not willing to share. And it has the secant. So what I found with the secant is like typically starting at like 10 in or 10 off. So I found, or well, touch is usually a pretty good place too, but the tune window usually is probably in a fairly narrower sort of place with this profile of bullet. Okay, so that's kind of the first thing. And again, I'm not saying this for every single secant bullet. You may have some that shoot great 100 thousandths off the lands. I've had bullets like that too, but I'm just saying in general, this is a good place to start, kind of thing. And so that's what I did. I went 10 in. And by the way, I even called Sierra, and they didn't have any recommendation. They were like, we've never heard of anyone shooting, this bullet with RL26. We didn't do a real in-depth seating depth test or whatever, which, surprises me. I don't know why they didn't, but or it may have just been the technician I was talking to that day who didn't know. I don't know. But either way, I was on a path. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to do full exploratory here. So let's just start with 10 in. And again, I use the closed bolt method to figure out where that bullet is getting really good into the lands there. And then I go 10 further in from there if I'm doing this kind of test. So, and now with RL26, I, again, did with a bullet this big, I had used RL26 on like 115 grain DTAC bullets, and I think some of the 109 grain burgers in my 6 Creedmoor, and got just really good precision with it, and just pretty dang high velocity with pretty much no pressure signs at even really high velocity levels. So anyway, I really had no basis though to like figure out where do I start the powder charge with this, and because I didn't want to get in trouble and have this thing blow up in my face. So what I did is I just went, I loaded a few rounds, 1, 2, and 3 rounds, and just, okay, I'll, 50 seems, and don't take this raw information. This is all just example right now because I don't know exactly what the powder charges were. All my test data is somewhere in my test data bin, and I'm not digging it out for but just for example, for illustration. So maybe starting with something like 50 grain is pretty low. I know that's not going to pressure up. I dump the powder in the case. I visually inspect inside the case, and it's only like maybe 2/3 of the way up. So there's plenty of boiler room in there, it's not even getting close to the shoulder neck junction in terms of, case fill. So I was like, okay, I think I'm pretty safe with 50. I'll shoot 50. And then I, loaded one with like 52 grains, and then one with 54 grains. Okay. And then I just went to the range, fired one at a time. So fired the 50 first, took a close look, are there any pressure signs at all? Did that feel weird? Take a look at that brass piece very carefully, look at the primer, just look for any sign, is there a line at the 200 datum suggesting, incipient case head separation, whatever it is, just very carefully inspecting it, and nothing really. I mean, it checked out good. It was like, okay, let's try the 52 now. bam, fired it. Take another close look at the case, checked out, good. Shot the 54, checked out, good. Okay. So now at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna load up a few more here, 4, 5, 6, or actually, I think I loaded a lot more. Um, so I decided, let me do like 54.5, 55, 55.2, 55.4, 55.6, 55.8, and 56. Okay. So then I loaded one of each of those, did the same exact thing, fired it, took the brass piece out, close inspection, nothing. All checked out, no pressure at all. So I thought, okay, let me fire a few more here just to be on the safe side, So 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So what I did is I went ahead and I did 56.5, 56.9, 57.1, 57.3, 57.5. Okay. So fired one, looked at the brass case, no problem. Fired another, looked at the brass case, no problem. No problem at all. Heck, I don't think I ever really. I think I may have got the bullet to be totally 90% to 95% full, and then after seating the bullet just probably was barely touching the powder column. And I fired those, and it was like no pressure signs at all. So I wasn't worried at that point. So that's called pressure testing. Like, just you slowly and methodically build up and look for pressure signs. I mean, vigilantly. My shooting range, at the time I was doing it, did not have the kind of lighting that they have now. They have LED strip lighting, which brightens up the place, but I didn't have that when I was doing this test. So I brought a flashlight. Like, I was intentionally like, I don't want to miss anything. So I was very intentional about doing it methodically and making sure everything was safe, watching everything, looking for every kind of pressure sign, even pulling the bolt, is this bolt coming up hard? Is anything, okay? Nothing was pressuring up. So I thought, okay, well, let me go kind of near the middle of this powder charge window, because it seems like it was a good 80% fill, like around 56. And if I work up to 57, it'll be around 90, percent, a little over 90 maybe. And so that bullet will be, just sitting on top of the column there a little bit. And I think I'm comfortable with that. No pressure signs at all. So I went ahead and went 10 in and shot 56, 56.2, 56. So went up in, 2/10 of a grain increments, and then slowed to 1/10 of a grain increment. All right, and then I just did 3-shot groups. So I loaded 3 of each, 3, 6, 9, 10, 12, blah, blah, blah. Just took a little box with me, went and fired them. And pleasantly surprised, it was like, okay, one was like a pretty good clover leaf. And then, 56.2 was kind of more of like a small dot, and then it was like another kind of clover leaf with one kind of leaking out to the right a little bit, just such slight, horizontal, and then it was like, opened up a little bit, kind of maybe one wasn't touching, and then, got maybe a kind of a horizontal slant, and then kind of got like 2 that were touching out here, one that kind of dropped out a little bit, and then it kind of dotted up a little good bit again, 3-leaf clover, and then a tiny, maybe small dot. Okay. And so from there, that told me I think I'm kind of in the right area. I think like it's looking really good. I think you can go from like 56 to 56.4. And so what I did is I went ahead and just loaded up. Let's do, 50. 5.9, 56, 56.1, 56.2, 56.3, 56.4, and 56.5. So now what I'm doing is, because I had 2/10 of a grain increments up here, but now I want to start doing 1/10 to see how broad this tune window is. So again, I loaded 3, and then fired them, and most of them were pretty dotted up at that point. None of them really had any considerable issue. I think I found like a good tune window, basically like from 56 to like 56.3, where I was like, I was comfortable with that. I was cool. So I went ahead and went to our local club match, shot, I think I settled on 56.1. and won the club championship, long range championship match with this bullet, shooting that. So I thought, okay, it's working good on target here. It functioned well at 300 and 600 yards for a club match. It's doing good. Okay. Now let's say it didn't do good. What would you do? Okay. So let's say I got the powder charge. I did the pressure test, and let's say I'm like 50. Let's say I'm back to point two, and I had different results. So let's simulate different results, and I would show you what I would do in these scenarios with different results. Okay. So let's say all of a sudden I get, 56.1 is showing pretty good horizontal, 56.2 is showing kind of a slanted horizontal with, maybe the bullets aren't touching. 56.4, maybe the bullets aren't touching, but they're starting to cluster together a little bit. 56.6, another slanted vertical. Anyway, I'm not seeing anything that is like super great at this point. And I'm like, well, maybe there was one group here that was kind of small, but it's like for the most part, I'm getting a lot of probably mostly horizontal, I'm getting a lot of horizontal here, horizontal there, horizontal there, horizontal. Two of them had some slight vert. But and a little bit of horizontal, but the majority of them had great deal of horizontal, maybe with one dot. Now don't don't say, okay, no, I got 57, that's the one that shot the best, I'm done. Don't do that. This pattern is out of tune. Okay, this is not a tune pattern, so don't fall for it. That one that looks, oh well, it looks like a three-leaf clover, good group, I'll use that. Don't do it. Something is disturbed here. Assuming your rifle is perfect, your rests are perfect, you're shooting on a perfectly calm day, and wind is not affecting this. You'll see this profile, and this tells you the seating is off. Why? The horizontal typically is off. So, but what I'll do is, I'll look at the pattern and say, well, which ones sort of had the least sort of vertical? And it's like, well, 57 to 57.1 had the least vertical. So I might at that point say, for charge weight, something in here seems to be working to sort of produce the least amount of vertical. So what I would do at that point is I would, for this type of bullet, pull it back from 10 thousandths in to touch. Okay, so where is it kind of touching, just, touching those lands, making engagement on those lands, and not further in, but just to the point where, yeah, it's engaging pretty well. So that's where I would pull it back to touch. And based on, again, the powder charge, I'd probably go, let's go 56.9, 57, 57.1, 57.2, 57.3, 57.4, maybe, I don't know, 57.52, 57.6. Anyway, and then shoot those. And typically I'd expect, boom, a tuning pattern to show up, where it's like, okay, three-leaf clover, three clover, and, a dot, and then 57.1, dot, 57.2, kind of maybe a slight vertical, and then a three-leaf, and so it's like showing a tune pattern at that point, and I'm like, okay, I think I see like, pretty good tune window going on here. Okay. At that point, I may just continue to explore and actually pull that bullet off to 10 off at that point. Okay. And try that with the same charges, 56.9, 57. But typically what happens is if I make a dramatic change from like in to touch, I usually will land on something. I'll usually find like a good tune window. I'll usually be like, yeah, I think I found like a good spot. But again, if I'm exploring with this round and no one knows anything about it or not willing to give it up, I might just go 10 off at that point and try it again, and hope to heck that, maybe it'll show a better tune window than touch. Maybe it'll show a better tune. Maybe you'll see 56 kind of slanted, 57 three leaf, and then you see it boom start to dot up at 57.1, dot up again at 57.2, and then kind of maybe a little bit wider, but a dot at 57.3, and then a three leaf clover at 57.4, and so it's like, boom, pretty good tune window going on right here. I might just set it at like 57.2, 10 off, okay? So anyway, that's in general how I do kind of exploratory. You may even at some point just say, well, let me go 20 off, and that's fine. But the general rule, and again, going back to this, remember what I said here, even if it's like the pattern's not there, I still look, where is the least vertical? So the general rule is vertical equals powder charge. Okay, so that's kind of the general rule that I operate on. And if the powder charge is good, I'm generally not seeing much, if any, sort of vertical in the group. Okay. And then the other rule is, based on sort of going from 10 in to touch to 10 off, seating equals horizontal. Okay, so you should see your horizontal dispersion start to tighten up as you're testing different seating depths. Okay, your horizontal should be reducing dramatically as you're getting the right seating depth. Okay, and so that's kind of where I view seating, is more the horizontal dispersion. And again, this is why, and I emphasize this over and over again, when you're tuning this way, tune in great perfect conditions. Don't let the wind form the group. You want the powder charge and the seating depth to form the group, okay? So I don't know why some people, tuning in wind is the best. It's like, no, then you don't know what made the group. Like, you have to tune in clear conditions to know what is making this group here. My charge and my seating, I want that to make the group, not the wind. Now, it's fine to tune in the wind after you have come up, like, okay, here I go. Here's my tune window. Here's where I'm going to set it. I now know that this bullet does better in general at 10 off. And, and I'm setting my, powder charge right in the middle of a good tune window. At that point, yeah, load up, 20 rounds or whatever and shoot four or five shot groups in windy conditions that are, consistent, and see where it lands. Look at your point of impact on your old targets. I bring my old targets with me to the range. So let me show you an example of that. So my data book is not just a data book, but I bring all of my targets with me from previous shooting, okay? So like I want to compare, where was the POI and the group shape when I shot this thing the last time in calm conditions, so that when I test to see how it does in the wind, I want to see, so that let's say it was a left-hand wind, a pretty consistent 7 mile an hour left, and it was pervasive throughout the whole 100 yards. And I fired off 5 really fast in that same condition. And then I saw, this was the POI in calm, and then, this was the POI in wind. And I go, okay, so now I know with, a 6 to 7 mile per hour left, I'm expecting it to change POI about, an inch and a half. Okay. Or, well, yeah, maybe even less, like maybe an inch. All right. So like I'm starting to actually now collect data on the wind effects, like how far is it pushing in various wind conditions. Okay. Then I might wait, okay, well, now I'm getting a right hand wind. Okay, cool. Let's shoot 5 real quick in this right hand. This right hand looks like it's about 5, and then bam, fire them off. And all of a sudden, they're all clustering in a small group that's now near the sort of center of the crosshairs, whereas the original group was kind of near the left. Now I know, okay, and that right hand, 5 mile an hour, it moves it maybe a quarter of an inch. Okay, so I'm starting to collect data on that too. So anyway, that's what I do in terms of when I have to do an exploratory analysis, and it's mostly starting with kind of looking at the bullet, kind of comparing it, compared to some norms either in my mind or in writing, like what normally are some good places to start with this bullet. Obviously, contacting the manufacturer is the ideal scenario. They hopefully should have data. Unfortunately, with this bullet, Sierra told me they didn't. And so just at that point, kind of going, okay, maybe this range is probably going to show some promise based on the way that bullet is shaped. And then again, doing a slow pressure test, because I had no idea what that powder charge was going to do for me. So I wanted it to be really slow and methodical in the pressure test. And then at that point, again, then now go, let's go into the lands, let's fire it. Let's look at the shapes, the patterns, look for the least vertical, so that if I find the least, vertical was in this charge range, then my next test when I move the bullet away from the lands is going to be in that window, because I'm expecting now to have pretty consistent, small amounts of vertical with that charge. And now I'm really honed in now on seating. Now I want to see the horizontal start to shrink, okay? And oh, look, it did on 10, and then anyway, and so just going back and back from into the lands, to touch and then off. And you can even do something too, and I've seen people do this, and I've actually done it too in the past. Let's say you're like, well, I see this is a good powder charge. I might just, load up, let's say 57, and then do like a more in-depth seating test. So I might take 3 rounds of, and let's say, what was this, touch? What was this, off? Shoot, I didn't write it down. So this one was touch, that was off. So this one, oh no, this one was 10 in. Well, shoot. Okay, well, let's just say, for example, this was my target, let's say at touch. So maybe I will sort of go, okay, let me load up 3 of 57, 3 57 with a powder charge with, 2 thousandths off the lands, 4 thousandths off the lands, 6 thousandths, 8 thousandths, 10 thousandths, and 12 thousandths. So now I'm thinking this is going to produce my least vertical. Now I'm going to just do a really, really precise test of seating depth, and I'm only going to start pulling it off the lands by 2 thousandths, okay? And then shoot those, on a whole new data card, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and grab a new data card. I'm going to say 57 is my charge, and then I'm going to say 0.002, 0.004, 0.006, 0.008, 0.010, 0.012, okay? And then shoot 3 of each and see at what point does my horizontal start to shrink and start to show far less horizontal within this pattern, okay? Maybe it's somewhere between, 8 to 12 thousandths, okay? And then maybe based on that, I might settle on seating 10 thousandths off. So there you go. There's just a couple of ways to do it, but again, don't advise doing it, because kind of trailblazing on your own could take you on many different trips. But in general, if you follow the rules, do some pressure testing. In general, again, powder charge is vertical, and seating is horizontal, and should get you somewhere. All right, everyone, this was a long video. Thanks for hanging in there. Hopefully it helps. Take care.